In continuing my support for the position that the legalization of same-sex marriage should not be the priority of the LGBT civil rights movement, I would first like to address the claim made by my opponent that I did not discuss the means for what I believe to be a crucial next step in this movement, diminishing the social stigma against the LGBT community. I did, in fact, cite three major priorities to which I think the movement must address its attention over same-sex marriage. First, hate crimes legislation, which would help to curb the sometimes fatal wave of violence against the LGBT community by raising awareness and by ensuring that those who perpetuate such violence are given justice for their crimes. Tolerance education and outreach programs, meanwhile, would work against the stigma in a more general fashion, by giving LGBT individuals the means to more proactively address discrimination and abuse, and fostering a non-discriminatory attitude in the next generation. Making one or more of these the focus of the LGBT civil rights movement would cater to a broader sector of the LGBT population, a better alternative to the marginalization of several segments of that population that centering on same-sex marriage might cause. My opponent stated that the fact that the movement is centered on it now indicates that an overwhelming majority of LGBT people consider it to be the most important issue. However, this is not necessarily the case. It merely means that those at the forefront of the movement happen to have pushed it in that direction. My opponent also says that same-sex marriage depicts the LGBT community as important components of loving families. However, it is not the LGBT community being depicted as such. It is merely those LGBT individuals choosing to get married. While it may provide a benefit for some, therefore, it may also further stigmatize the many other members of the community who are not seeking marriage in the future. The alienation I am talking about still applies to the transgender demographic. Same-sex marriage does include the transgender community, yes, however not in the way that they would ultimately want to be included, not according to their definitions of their own genders. Instead, it allows society to bypass accounting for its refusal to legitimately recognize when people identify with a gender that is different than their sex. It forces the transgender community to accept a solution that just only happens to benefit them, not that actually intends to benefit them. Turning now to another issue, I have to disagree with my opponent and state that speculation about whether same-sex marriage will actually come with the benefits it promises is extremely relevant to this debate. When determining what is going to be the top priority for the LGBT civil rights movement, all aspects of the proposed priority must be considered, including how such a measure will actually be implemented in America once it is achieved. Opponents of same-sex marriage could potentially find a way to manipulate the rights of LGBT couples supposedly guaranteed with marriage. For example, it is a too easy legislative move to allow same-sex marriage, but still to keep restrictions on adoption rights of same-sex couples on the books. My opponent stated that same-sex marriage is important because it gives queer youth a future to look forward to. However, what about those who can't cheer themselves with the thought of marriage because the threat of employment or housing discrimination clouds their imagination? Or what about those who suffer so much at the hands of the cultural stigma here and now that they might not even make it to that future? Note that while I do not believe the fight for same-sex marriage should be abandoned in this country, it should be classified as a secondary priority to these other pressing issues. Hate crimes legislation, tolerance education, and LGBT community outreach provide the most proactive means of combating the cultural stigma that contributes to these issues, and thus should be focused on first.